Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Cathedral Check-in. My name is Mark McDonald, and I am the Interim Communications Officer and Assistant Director of Music here at Christ Church Cathedral. On today's episode, we're really excited to be looking at one of the staples of cathedral life here, which is the Guild of Change Ringers, our bell ringers that ring from the tower. The cathedral's bells have been an integral part of the history of this building. And we, of course, in normal times, hear them every single Sunday morning as they ring before the service. Since last year, we haven't had a chance to hear the bells quite as often, especially as of March 2020, the bells were completely silenced for the first time in a little while. So to talk a little bit about what it's been like to be a bell ringer during the pandemic, I'm joined with David Oliver, the tower captain, and our tower captain emeritus and bell ringer, Alan Batten. So thank you both, David and Alan, for joining me today.
Nice to be here.
Alan, let's start with you. You are the former bell or tower captain of the cathedral. How long have you been ringing at the cathedral?
I've been ringing at the cathedral since September of 1959, but I actually learned to ring while I was still living in England, and I started ringing in 1950.
Wow.
Which makes it fairly easy for me to compute how long I've been ringing.
Indeed. So here at the cathedral, 1959, that means the towers themselves were only just being completed or had been completed a few years prior.
A few years before I came, yes. I think it was the first task that Brian Whitlow undertook when he was appointed dean, and he'd been dean for about 5 years when I came. So the towers, I don't know the exact date, but it could only have been 2 or 3 years before I arrived.
And at the time, there were 8 bells, is that right?
That's right, yes.
And we now have 10?
We augmented to 10 in 1983.
Amazing. So amazing connection with the cathedral and as we say now, our longest serving bell ringer. Is that right, Alan?
I think I am, yes.
Well, thanks for being here today. Our current tower captain is David Oliver. And David, what's your history with the cathedral bells?
Yeah, I'm a comparative newcomer. And I actually learned to, although I have an English accent, I did not learn to ring in England. I learned to ring here at the cathedral in 1977.
Okay.
So I too have been around quite a long time, but not as long as Alan.
So you were at least here to see the new bells put in, the new bells, as it were.
That's right, the 2 new trebles, yes. So I was here for that, yes.
So March 2020, let's go back to that. It's a time where none of us really want to remember the chaos that ensued at the beginning of March. But for the bell ringers, it went from ringing every week to not ringing at all. And so what was sort of, what happened at the beginning of March, and how did you decide to silence the bells?
We just found that the cathedral basically was closed and we were not able to ring the bells. And
it was also a question of distance, right?
Yes. Yes. So we had to. So the rules came in that you had to, be masked and socially distanced and sanitized frequently. And because our bells are 1 meter apart, we couldn't keep to the 2 meter social distancing. So initially, at that time from March to, I think, July, we did not ring at all. And then the rules were relaxed to some extent. And the cathedral opened to, social distancing. And so we applied to ring using social distancing, so that if we thought if we rang every other bell, so only 5 out of the 10 bells. We could keep 2 meters apart and ring with a mask on and with frequent sanitizing, and we could do it safely. So that is what we did. And so we were ringing 5 bells from July until November, when the stricter regulations came in again. The cathedral was closed, and we have not been ringing since then.
It's a pretty unusual circumstance that we find ourselves in, obviously, with COVID. But as I recall, there's only one other time in the history of the cathedral when the bells were silenced. And Alan, I think you might have been there for that.
Yes, I was. And Pop Izard was still tower captain in those days. And he decided one New Year's Eve, when there was, for Victoria, a very cold temperature, that it would be unsafe to ring the bells.
And what year was that, Alan?
Pardon?
And what year was that?
Well, David reminds me that it was 1968.
Wow.
The cold temperature doesn't worry us much in Victoria, but in Calgary and Toronto, for instance, where they also have rings of bells, it's a major consideration in the winter.
And is that because the bells can break if they're too cold, or?
Yes, there is a danger that the bell might crack when the clapper strikes it if the weather's very cold.
Wow. So between 1968 and 2020, essentially the bells have been rung every single week.
As far as I know, yes.
That's right. Yes, it's a bit of a matter of pride for us that is what we do.
So it must have been pretty devastating for the group to have to stop meeting back in March of 2020. What are some of the things that you've been able to do as a group throughout the pandemic?
Well, we've been meeting through Zoom, and we have discovered a program which has been created that allows one to ring bells on the computer by tapping the keys. And so we've been, instead of meeting on Tuesday nights in the tower, we've been meeting in our homes virtually, ringing through this program, which is called the Ringing Room.
Wow, that's really fascinating. Is it something that was created just during the pandemic, or is it software that's been around for a while?
I think it's been around for a while, but of course, it's only really been discovered on a major scale during this period of time.
So we'll get to the ringing room in a second, but I wanted to just touch on one of the few times this past year when you were able to ring. And one of the really touching moments of last year was back in August, where several of the ringers were able to come together for the Bells for Peace event. And one of you jump in. What exactly is Bells for Peace, and what did you do?
Well, it was the anniversary of the Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombings. And there was actually an international move to ring bells at the time that the bombs were dropped. And so on August the 6th, which is the Hiroshima one, and I think on August the 8th,
8th or 9th or something. Yeah.
Or 9th, yes. So we got, at that time, we were still able to ring the 5 bells. So we got together and rang our 5 bells, half muffled, which means that you get an open, clear sound and a muffled sound alternately. And,
right. And I take it that that's a sign of mourning or solemnity. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know that was very meaningful both for the Bellringers, but also for the community in general. And I was there that day taking some photos and noticed lots of people on the streets stopping and looking up. I think a little bit surprised to be hearing these bells, especially on a weekday for the first time in quite a while. So it certainly was a beautiful event. And I think there were a couple of other places in Victoria that participated. Is that right?
That's right. Yes. I think every church was asked to ring during that same time.
Hmm.
And and it sort of happened as a wave across the country, as the time changed hour by hour across the country, bells were ringing.
Well, it's obviously been quite a sad and disappointing year to be a bell ringer, or of course for all of us as we go through this pandemic. But it's great to have been able to do some special, poignant things like that. So, so it's great that we were able to participate. I want to go back to the ringing room for a second because this sounds really neat, and so I think we might have to sort of take a pause here while we get set up. But David, I understand that you've got the ringing room program open, so you can sort of demonstrate a little bit for us. Is that right?
Well, yes, although I can't find the, oh, there we go. Share screen. Right, there we go.
Exactly. So once, so David's going to set up his screen sharing there, and so we should be able to see a little bit of this program. So here it comes. Wow. Okay. So we've even got the colored ropes and everything.
Yeah, that's right. And and you'll notice how so the colored ropes that you see, that's an image of the Sally, which is the furry part of the rope that we hold.
Mhm.
And then you, as the bell rings, you'll see that change to the tail end of the rope, which is kind of simulates the way we have two strokes, what we call the hand stroke, where we pull the Sally, and the backstroke, where we pull the tail end.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So why don't you give us a little preview here?
A short demonstration. Okay. And a computer will even give the instructions, so you'll hear the computer speak.
Look to Troubles Going and Gone. That's all.
Wow, there we go. That was really exciting. And I'm sure if it's not too blurry on people's screens, they probably could see the rows of numbers going by that you were following, David. It almost is like being in the tower, but obviously there's a couple of things that are different. And the big thing is that the muscle of your finger doesn't maybe quite correspond to how much work it actually is. About how many of you are there right now in the guild, and are most of you meeting every week?
There's about 15 in the guild altogether, but we have actually two ringing room sessions. One is on a Tuesday night for what you might call the regular ringers. We have a group of, which is very exciting, but really unfortunate, that just about the time that the pandemic hit, we have a group of newcomers, new ringers. And just when they were starting to learn how to ring a rope, to handle a rope, they were prevented from doing so. So anyway, we have a beginner's session on a Thursday night. And it's very impressive the way the beginners have learned how to ring on the computer, the methods, before they've even learned how to handle a rope, if you see what I mean. So it's going to be very interesting to see how, when we get back in the tower and they start to learn how to pull a rope, I think it will stand them in good stead that they already know, to some extent, some of the sequences that we are ringing.
Well, I'm sure we're all anxious to be able to get back into the cathedral again, and most certainly with the ringers.
Yeah,
being
none more so than the ringers.
today. Mm-hmm. So we're going to wrap up for now, but David and Alan, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of insight into this last very strange year for the Bellringers. It's been so interesting to talk with both of you about some of the history here and about the innovative things that you're doing amidst this very strange time. So thank you very much.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for having us.
So if you want to learn more about the Cathedral Bellringers on the website, on the website, there's a page that talks about the ringers. You can always, if you're interested in ringing yourself, it sounds like you can even learn to do so virtually right now. So, and you can be in touch with David Oliver about that. So once again, thanks to David and Alan for joining us, and we'll see you next time on our next Cathedral Check-in. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
There was one thing that we forgot to mention in the video today, which was the most recent activity of the Cathedral Bellringers. Last Saturday, in commemoration of Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, whose funeral was that morning, David Oliver, the tower captain, came to the cathedral and rang the cathedral's tenor bell 99 times in memory of the prince. And this was actually the first time since November that one of the cathedral bells has been rung. So it's a very poignant moment, both in recognition of the prince's service and also in recognition of the silencing of these bells over the pandemic. So once again, thanks to David and Alan for joining us today, and I hope you'll learn more about the Cathedral Bellringers by going to our website and reading up about their program. Thanks again, and see you soon.